one, and we are live, ladies and gentlemen, for a new episode of the Electrek Podcast. I am Fred Lambert, your host, and I'm joined, as usual, by Seth Wintraub. How are you doing today, Seth?
I'm good.
I hope you're good because we have a ton to discuss this week in this new episode that is sponsored by Electrify America, the largest public fast charging network in the US. We're going to have more to say later on the show, but thanks for Electrify America for sponsoring the show. And this week, the show is going to center around, mainly the two important shareholders, meaning that it was in the auto industry in the US this week. Tesla's, of course, that happened yesterday. And GM also had an event earlier this week where there was a lot of EV talk that we're going to discuss later on in the show. But first, we're going to start where we left off last week because we were expecting the numbers to be released last week. They were delayed to Saturday, so we're going to have to discuss them now. And some pretty sweet numbers in there. We're talking about 241,300 vehicles delivered in Q3 2021 for Tesla globally. So a massive, massive beat on the expectation of Wall Street at 222, I think it was. So yes, significant beat here. More deliveries than production. Production was 237,000, which was also a record. So production went up despite all those production supply chain issues that Tesla was talking about earlier in the quarter. So those issues were basically slowing down an actually like successful ramp up in production because production did increase significantly. But other important thing to note is Tesla is still not breaking down S and X, 3 and Y deliveries. Of course, it doesn't matter much for S and X these days because production of the X hasn't started yet, the new version, I should say. But Tesla produced almost 9,000 Model S, delivered 9,200 of them. So a significant ramp up for the S, which started production in June. So this Q3 was the first full quarter of production for the new version of the Model S, and we're seeing a decent ramp up. But we expect a lot more in Q4, and the X should also be added to that mix too. Model 3, Model Y, 232,000 units delivered, just a few thousand fewer that were produced. So yeah, massive result for Tesla this quarter. Basically at quarter of a million quarterly. So basically a million a year at this point. Like you were a few shorts. It's airdrop, but yeah.
Yeah, and with the chip shortage as a backdrop, even more impressive.
Oh, for sure. Because if you compare those numbers, like the growth here, which did I include the growth numbers in there? I did not, but it's significant, massive year-over-year growth, and also decent quarter-over-quarter growth. While all of the automakers have seen a quarter-of-quarter reduction because of the aforementioned chip shortage. So Tesla is navigating that a lot better than anybody else. Of course, lower volume than most other people are handling, but still, it's impressive. Not in terms of electric vehicles, of course. I'm talking about like gasoline vehicles also need chips, and but automakers that produce, I mean, at least the smart ones, they do try to prioritize the chip supplies to their electric vehicles, and we know that Ford did that with the Mustang
Mm-hmm.
Mach-E now that's getting more supply than the regular Mustang, and it's also selling a lot better than the regular Mustang these days. But yeah, I mean, congrats to Tesla and the whole team. Congrats to the delivery and service team too that we know had the tough end of the quarter as we previously discussed. And
As they always
hopefully,
do.
yeah, as they always do. But apparently, Elon, like it's been a while since Elon has talked about reducing those delivery waves. So now he's talked a lot about it over the last month. So hopefully, he means it this time. And like I previously said, he said that it should be less so in Q4, but normally Q4 is always the biggest delivery wave. So I don't know if I believe him on that front. It makes sense starting next year in Q1 that things slows down because we should have a somewhat of a decent ramp up in Berlin and in Texas that should help alleviate that because the transit time is the biggest issue, like making cars more locally, even if it's just the Model Y. Well, when I say just the Model Y, it's the biggest vehicle program for Tesla right now. But
Is
so
it
even just
officially the
that,
biggest?
I mean,
I mean, they're just ramping up Shanghai, so
Like where they sell both, I think it is. Like
yeah,
if you go with Model 3,
that's
with
fair.
European market, with the Model Y is just starting with one version, maybe not, but globally, everywhere where they sell both, I think the Model Y is taking over.
And that's clearly where Tesla's, eyeballs are.
Yeah.
It's also interesting to note that the inventory, they sold more than they actually made. So that means the inventory is thinning out even
Yeah.
more. And, Tesla's not known for trying to keep a lot of inventory, although
Hmm.
I think they had some Model S's from the software that was slow to roll out. But it's super impressive. Like there's no way you can criticize that quarter, those quarterly numbers. And it looks really good for Tesla going forward that, they're growing at such a large clip
Hmm.
and they still can't make enough cars.
Yeah, by far too.
Yeah.
And they wrote those delivery numbers into the shareholders meeting that happened yesterday. And during that shareholder meeting, there was the usual first part. That's the more official part where the shareholders vote on a few items. This time around, there was the re-election of two director Murdoch and Kimball Musk, Elon's brother, and James Murdoch, the son of what's the father's name? Rupert.
Rupert.
Rupert Murdoch, billionaire media mogul. And so they re-elected those two. They did a few changes too that are worth noting. For example, now it's 2 years term for the director. There was actually a proposal to bring it down to 1 year term, but I think it was shut down. I didn't see all the results just yet. Actually, they should be posted today, so I should check them out. But a bunch of shareholder proposal too that I assume were also shut down by Tesla because they always vote against them. But this time there might be one or two that pass. I should look them up, but they were all related to culture, and they were all really prevalent in the media this week because it came off of Tesla's, of course, getting $137 million discrimination lawsuit. That's a settlement, not a settlement. It's what the court ordered to say because they to pay because they went actually to trial with it. So Tesla normally goes to arbitration with employees issues like that, and one of the shareholder proposals was to be more transparent about those arbitration issues because it was interesting that for the first time you actually have an employee complaint like that goes beyond the arbitration system and goes to trial, and as it goes to trial, Tesla loses and is they award $137 million to an employee. We're talking about one single employee here, getting that paycheck over what was described as a racist environment he was working in with a lot of racial slur. The employee is black, by the way. That's an important thing to mention. And but I guess the main complaint, because I think $6 million was awarded in damages, and the rest, the $130 million rest, was punitive damage. So normally those punitive damage is to try to enforce the company to change its ways because um, the complaints were around especially like we just discussed, the arbitration system instead, the lack of actually changing based on the complaints and the last responding to those complaints. But Tesla went on the offensive again right after the release of that. They released a whole blog post about it. Well, it wasn't a blog post because of course there's no one at Tesla to write blog posts these days apparently. But I had to do a little jab at this amendment of the PR. But it was an email that Tesla's head of HR sent to employees, and Tesla decided to share that on their blog. But if you read it, and it's on Tesla's website right now, you can go and read it. It's clearly crafted also by the legal department at Tesla. You can see that it's, um, especially after a judgment being passed, right, like that, they are getting ready to appeal it, most probably. But it's going to be interesting to see if they actually end up having to pay an amount like that. Yep. So there was the first part like that, and then Elon went on his presentation, uh, usual presentation of just like basically an update over the last year, a few comments on what's happening right now. Some interesting thing he says, he confirmed that Shanghai Gigafactory Shanghai is now producing more vehicles than Gigafactory Fremont. I mean, we're not calling it Gigafactory Fremont for some reason, Fremont Factory, but it's basically Gigafactory because it's also
Gigafactory
produces
Zero.
Yeah, it also produces like 500,000 cars a year, basically. Um, and then he announced that Tesla is going to move to Texas, to Austin, Texas,
Mm-mm-mm.
move the headquarters, I should say.
Controversy.
So it doesn't sound like Tesla is going to actually move anything. It's just going to be an official move of their headquarters, and I assume that some people are also going to follow with that move, and people like the leadership maybe, but. I assume that Tesla is keeping its location in Palo Alto and also in Fremont. And Elon was very clear that Tesla is not leaving California, that they're staying there, but only the headquarters is leaving and going to Austin. And he specified that they still plan to grow in California. And he mentioned, of course, Fremont, growing the output of Fremont by 50%. So that's something that Tesla has talked in the past before. You don't even mention like an output of 1 million electric vehicles per year in Fremont at some point, but it was always kind of pie in the sky because, I mean, look at Fremont right now. Like, look at the drone flyovers. It is packed to the brims. They they have to like shuttle employees around because they can park there. It's pretty crazy. And the inside of it, I mean, when did we visit it? Set it was like 2018 or something.
Yeah.
And already then, like you go through the factory and
Yeah, there
it
was nowhere to
was
park,
packed.
nowhere to go. I mean,
Yeah.
theoretically, you put in some good mass transit
No, I
and
mean inside the factory when we
oh yeah.
visited. Yeah, that in the inside was completely packed.
Yeah. I mean, there theoretically could be
Mm-hmm.
parts where it wasn't. Although the
Mm-hmm.
fact that Tesla's building tents here and there doesn't bode well.
Yeah, that was
And
pre-tense.
yeah. They have a bunch of other like offshoot factories. I think the battery factory is like a mile away, right?
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
the new one, and they're building all kinds of the mega factory. Is that what it's
Yeah,
called?
that was another part of the something that you mentioned as we were still growing in California, the mega factory that we reported on last month. That's the new mega pack factory that in Lathrop, which is about like an hour from Fremont. And actually, at the event, he confirmed the planned production capacity of that factory, and he said it's going to be 40 gigawatt hour of annual production capacity for mega pack production there. That's wild because right now Tesla is basically producing not just megapacks but all energy storage capacity, stationary energy storage capacity, so Powerwall, Megapack, and Power Packs. Though I assume Megapack is the biggest portion of it, but they're producing it at roughly 4 gigawatt hour per year. So
So
that's
order of magnitude.
yeah, you love that word.
Add a zero.
Yeah, a 10x increase in capacity just with that factory alone. So I mean, I don't know when that's gonna happen because it looks like it's still a bottleneck. The battery cell is still a bottleneck. So even if you can produce more mega packs, like you need the batteries for the battery cells. And Elon also during the meeting reiterated the fact that Tesla is gonna keep prioritizing electric vehicles, the cell supplies for electric vehicles, and he even said that the excess cells are going to go to mega packs and those kind of products. So for them to achieve 40 gigawatt hour of megapacks with excess cells, like you need that's a lot of excess cells. I mean,
Yeah.
just a few years ago, that was like the world's annual production of battery cells was around 440 gigawatt hours.
Yeah. I mean, this ramp of not just Tesla, but just everybody's building factories,
Mhm.
GM, Ford, Mercedes, everybody, Volkswagen, obviously. Like, we're going from such a small amount of battery production to 10 years from now where it's just going to be crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the move to Austin for the headquarters, so there's not he didn't specify where that's going to be, but it's most likely going to be at the site of Gigafactory Austin. But the site at Gigafactory Austin is it's massive. It's 2,000 acres. It's a giant site. So it might be at the factory itself. It's big enough for that, or it might be just a different building like on the site. And we know that Elon previously mentioned this ecological paradise that they plan to build there. So he mentioned it again at the meeting, and he said that's going to be part of that. So we assume it's going to be part of like this giant complex that Tesla's building there, much like Tesla's own version of Apple's. How do you call the giant Apple campus, the
I
headquarters?
mean, people call it the spaceship, but the
Uh,
official name is Apple Park.
Apple Park.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I assume Tesla is building its own version of that. And Elon has talked about that before. Around the time that Apple was building the Apple Park, he was talking about just cool new headquarters for Tesla because he doesn't like the ones in Palo Alto. And to be fair,
Well,
the ones
it's
in Palo Altos are not very impressive.
it's like a bad '70s building that they're in
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess they couldn't find anything better,
hmm
so they go to
But
Texas.
yeah, I mean, he mentioned a few things that do make sense. He mentioned, of course, the lower cost of living there, so it's easier to buy a house. So if you want to bring engineers, bring executive there, like I mean, even like people doing like a decent like 6-figure salary in Palo Alto, it's not easy to become a homeowner, which that's pretty wild.
Yeah,
But in Austin, it's doable right now. But I would assume that the prices are going pretty up pretty fast now because Samsung is moving there too. Apple is
but I mean, both of
hiring a
those
lot,
companies, Samsung,
Mhm.
Apple, have been there for a decade, but they're
but they're growing there a
they're
lot. Yeah.
growing, yeah, and a bunch of other companies that are like parts companies that work with Tesla.
hmm
The companies that are parts suppliers to Apple and Samsung are also ramping up there. So it's kind of like these ecosystems are growing there. I mean, it's great for Austin, and Austin's a great town within Texas, which I wouldn't call great all outside of Austin. Some good, some bad,
Yeah.
but
Like everywhere. Like everywhere.
yeah, like everywhere. But what's interesting is like you're creating this like you know kind of Silicon Valley 2
hmm
scenario over here. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm curious. I need to go back to Austin. I haven't been in a while, and sure it's changing rapidly right now. But yeah, I mean, those were the reason that Elon said at the meetings. But of course, we know that like, the first time that Elon even mentioned moving the headquarters to Texas were for completely different reasons that he didn't discuss at all during the meeting. But they came up just now, a few hours ago. I don't know how to pronounce that publication, like Tasmanian, something like that. Like the wrote an line about the headquarters moving, and they wrote the article like linking the headquarters moving to uh, last year when an assemblywoman in a state representative in California told Elon to f off around the time that he threatened for Tesla to leave California. And back then he wasn't talking about headquarters. He was talking about we're gonna leave California regarding the COVID restriction there. Then and early in the pandemic, and this assemblywoman was angry about it, and she that he would threaten something like that, and she told Elon to f off, and they linked the leaving like to that, and then Elon responded exactly to that article, as if that was the reason that he left, which is a ridiculous thing to say, but because even if we you don't just believe the official reason that he gave during the meeting, there's plenty of other reason too. Like I see Jonathan Root just mentioned it. The obvious one is the taxes that are much lower in Texas. So we know that before Tesla ever moved its headquarters to Texas, Elon himself moved to Texas, and he did the move. Of course, again, it was apparently regarding his political issues with California, but he also come right before he's about to exercise a ton of options um, that are going to be he's going to have to pay a lot of taxes on them. So this is interesting timing too. I'm not saying that's the reason, but the timing is interesting to say the least.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, there's a lot of things about Austin that may make more sense, but most of them, revolve around money. Whether it's, Jonathan Root also mentioned unions. They're a right to work state.
mhm,
California is much more union focused. As you mentioned, the less expensive housing and cost of living, um, but also, Elon's personal, life is also has a lot of SpaceX going on,
mhm.
which of course SpaceX is in Los Angeles, but really a lot of launches are happening in Texas, not in Austin, but
Yeah.
you know, nearby. So uh, it's a lot more convenient
Mm.
for Elon, who coincidentally also sold all of his LA property not too long ago. So kind of a kind of a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. And some other interesting thing that he mentioned during the meeting, Tesla insurance. Oh, sticking with Texas, yeah, there was a small update on that. So since earlier this year, Tesla's been working to try to launch it in more states than California, which is the only states available right now. And he said that it's actually going live in Texas next week. So be ready to see
You
Tesla.
know what Tesla needs to do in Texas?
What?
Sell cars. They're not able to sell their cars in Texas.
Yeah,
Like
their
today.
headquarters are going to be in a state where they're not officially able to sell cars. I think there was another effort to change that recently. I would assume that Tesla's going to have a little bit more power after that. But
So if you live in Texas, if you're a Tesla employee and you want to get a car, they have to send it out of state and then back into state. That sounds right? Or can they
I don't
just
know if
deliver
they.
it?
Well, I don't think they have to send it anywhere because they just don't register it because the cars are coming right now from California anyway. So they're coming from California and they don't register them in Texas until they sell them. So they don't have to do that. It's just that the transaction has to go through California or another neighboring state. So there's not an actual transport issue, I think. But I think if the laws doesn't change, there might be for cars coming out of Gigafactory Austin because that's in Texas. So I would assume that Tesla thinks that this is going to be fixed by then, and that's a big ask because, I mean, if you look at the politics, that the legislation coming out of Texas right now is just not very encouraging stuff
Nope.
in terms of common sense, and and then when you factor in the strength of the dealership in Texas, because the dealership have a lot of political power at the state level, but also like it's all um, it's all localized. Like if you have like a dealership that it's in a specific like district, then they give money to that state representative there. Then that state representative is not going to vote for a change of the direct sales law. And Tesla's power, it might be like seem big in Texas, but it's actually very localized around Austin. So they lose some power there in terms of like getting the actual votes to change the direct sell laws. So uh, Tesla might be facing an uphill battle still in Texas with changing that, and that would be interesting thing to follow. Because I mean, I hope for them that they can change it because obviously it makes no sense. But well, it makes no sense if you have common sense and if you're not invested in local dealerships.
Right.
Or if you don't rely on money from local dealerships to be reelected, which is another problem altogether. But yeah, and then Elon said aspirationally, and this is an important word. When you listen to Elon Musk, you need to be careful about the words he used uh, about Tesla insurance launching in most of the US next year. So, I mean, it took Tesla like 2 years to get from California to get from one state to two states. So, saying that within a year they're going to be in almost all states is pretty wild. But
Maybe New York next year.
yeah, and maybe also they dial it down the application for getting insurance in all the different states. But we also know that they took their time because they want to launch in Texas and any other state with the telemetry based system, which they don't have in California yet. So they're also updating the version of the insurance that they have in California to basically include the driver safety thing that Tesla launched last week regarding the FSD release, but for insurance. Speaking of that FSD release, there was also some comment about that, and Elon said that Tesla. This is a good one. He talked about, and so there was some confusion about people on that. They think he was just answering a question. He wasn't answering a question. He offered those comments as part of his opening statement, like as if like this is like news. He was announcing that Tesla is going to license in the future, of course, its full self-driving software to other automaker. He described it as like a moral responsibility that it's going to be a significant lifesaver and preventer of injuries. That is not a technology we want to keep to ourselves. So I think we will be morally right to license it to other manufacturers if they would like to use it. If they would like to use it is of course the big question, because right now I don't think there's no one's going to raise their hand because there's no full self-driving software right now. There's full self-driving beta, which they now call it FSD beta because is actually not full self-driving. And yeah, that was that. So they brought again the whole rollout to the forefront, because he was also asked later on if we're still on for tomorrow, which is now today, the release of version 10.2, which apparently is still going to happen at midnight tonight, midnight California time, I think, to the early access owners. But at the same time, Tesla is going to give it to the first 1,000 FSD buyers that are not in early access, but that have 100% safety score, which made it interesting, because then someone asked him, they asked him, "What's your safety score?" And Elon, because Elon said, "I've used 10.2 to come to the meeting today from the house, and I got no driver intervention." Everything was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And then someone asked him, "What's your score?" And then Elon quickly became quite flustered. He was like, actually, I don't know what my score is. I'll check." I mean, when he said, I'll check, I was like, check right now. Just pull out your phone and check. You can, like, Seth, you can check. I cannot, because I'm Canadian, but Seth, you can check right now. It takes a second. And where you at right now? You were at 87 last week?
I was at 91, but
Oh.
I had to go to LaGuardia Airport, so that's gonna kill me. But right now it's not refreshing for some reason, so
uh,
I don't know. I'm in the 90s. I'm not gonna get it
okay.
tonight. I'm not my.
No.
If I wake up tomorrow and have it, it's something went wrong. Something went horribly wrong.
Yeah. So he said, "I'll check it. I'll check it." But and then he was like, "Oh, it's not perfect. It's not well, not his score. I mean, but the system is not perfect." And Elon's score is probably not perfect with that reaction, which raises this whole issue of like how they're rolling out, and like it's all about making it as safe as possible. It's not really about that. If because I mean, himself, he admitted that the safety score is not perfect, and we discussed how like there's plenty of ways to hurt your score, even though without making any mistakes as a driver. I mean, and so how it's about slowing down the wider release that they, because I mean we've been burned a few times on the wider release anyway, so it's just another burn on that. But it's about slowing that down because they want to have a much control on it. I mean, because if your goal was really to give it to the safest drivers in the first place, were the early access program drivers the safest drivers? Like, was there any check on that? And I mean, we have example of like people reaching out to Elon on Twitter and like, "Hey, can I have the FSD, please?" And Elon said, "Yeah, sure, you can have the FSD beta if you want." So like, there was it wasn't about that. Like, which raises the question: what were the criterias for people to get FSD beta in the first place?
I think most people understand. I mean, most people who watch our show and read our site know that it's basically people who are very favorable toward Tesla in their in their Twitter personas. Were that's basically everybody who was broadcasting full self-driving footage was of that group of people that are extremely pro Tesla. And then on top of that, Tesla threw in a non-disclosure, which I think
Mm,
Vice got the wording of, which basically said you can't post anything negative, or if you don't post something that would give the haters some ammunition or whatever. So even the Galley thing that we talked about last
mm,
week, where he's doing it, admittedly not an easy drive to navigate the monorail thing or whatever that was. But somebody took a clip of his self drive, and where it almost ran over some people, and was like,
mm,
this is clearly not ready for prime time. And then Galley threatened him to
mhm.
get to his employer, and then obviously Tesla probably wasn't too happy about that. Galley deleted the whole video, um, and I think DCMCA drove DCM DMCA'd
Yeah.
it. So just like that's not it. It's not obviously not currently being objectively tested. I think we can all agree with that. So
Or
getting
we
yeah
they're not sharing. we're not getting a clear image of the testing.
Right.
That's more because I mean they could be sharing like very honest feedback to Tesla through that program. It's just that our only view through that program were those people, and we obviously learned last 2 weeks ago, whatever that was, that we weren't getting not that we didn't know that. Like I think most people that are a little bit um skeptical, like they knew what was happening. But yeah, I mean, this idea that Tesla is only sharing FSD beta to the safest possible driver is a fallacy.
Right.
Obviously, it's all about slowing down the release, which I don't necessarily disagree with. It's just that I don't like the communications around it, because we've been burned so many times about that. Like Elon since 2016 calling FSD like a solved problem, and then promising. Do you remember back in the day where he was like, "Hey, buy FSD right now. You're gonna get it faster than other people."
Oh yeah.
Like that's when I placed my order. Then I was lied to. Like it's not, it wasn't true. Now it's about this little game that we played about that you get a score on, and then you get it maybe faster with that.
Yeah.
So that changed. Do you remember when he said that FSD would be an appreciating asset on your car
Yeah.
now, and that hasn't turned out to be true yet.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it won't be in the future, but it hasn't been true yet.
Yeah.
So like these were very successful, like um, marketing tactic, like
Tactics. Yeah.
to sell the cars, and they worked. They worked on you. They worked on me. They worked on thousands of people.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that I feel like I was like cheated or anything like that. Like it's not about that. It's about, I think we we just need to like be harder on Tesla on the communication around it. Like they're not being fair. Like this whole control around it. It's not great in my opinion.
Yeah, and
Um,
like we have a reason to be skeptical. Like
yeah,
everybody else who's got FSD is using the current, version of autopilot, which it does good stuff for sure. Like it makes driving on highways a lot easier,
no, for sure.
but it's clearly not. We're not close to robo taxis. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not. We're
So
not.
when he goes on and he's like, "Oh, we morally responsible to share that software with other automakers," it hurts a few people. Like you're like, I get it to work first, get it to people that paid for it first, then we'll see if other people want it. Um, and this is coming from someone it, who thinks that Tesla is the leader on that front. Like this whole, do you remember who does that weird chart about who's the leader in self driving, and Tesla is always at the bottom of it? Like a
Yeah, I
really
know.
really
It.
respected research firm that does that,
Yeah.
and like Waymo's always on top, and then Cruise, and then Tesla is like at the bottom of it. Like a
Yeah.
very popular chart that is updated every year. I think this chart is completely wrong. I think Tesla's approach in terms of a vision-based system with neural nets is the one that makes the most sense, because that's how we operate vehicles right now, with a neural net and with a vision-based system. I do think that there are flaws in the system, like blind spots that we need to be fixed, which is my problem with the whole appreciating assets, because I think there might need to be some hardware changes. But anyway, I still think Tesla has the best approach. I just think they need to be more realistic about the communication, because it's bordering on false advertising. like they are being smart in the way that Tesla is being smart in the way they
So it
phrase thing officially. Who is
was
it?
Navigant Research.
Yeah, Navigant Research,
Yeah.
exactly.
They put Waymo,
Yeah,
Cruise, Ford,
yeah.
Baidu in the first quadrant.
Yeah, and then Tesla's that way back. I think they might be a little bit up in the last update or something, but I know for years they were way back.
Yeah.
But yeah, but Elon himself, like Elon, if Elon were like, you take Elon's word and you put them on Tesla's website, on Tesla's marketing thing and everything, I think that a lot of that would be considered like false advertising. So it's that's what I'm worried about. Just being more honest and more realistic about the feedback here. All
What do you
right,
think
moving.
about like giving people the option of getting a refund on their self-driving stuff? Do you think
Oh yeah,
Tesla
yeah,
should do that or
yeah. I think there should be a like a small mea culpa from Elon about that. About like, yes, I've been wrong about like. I mean, no, like this is an extremely hard technology to deliver. I acknowledge that. No problem with them being late to deliver it. Like it's gonna happen with that. It's just the language that Elon used to sell the package to people made it seem different. That's it.
Also, and the threats of it going up and all that other
Yeah,
stuff.
the going up in prices, telling people that's going to be an appreciating asset soon and everything. Like yeah, you're right. I think Tesla should like come out with that and like, if you're not happy with the way that the FSD program has been rolled out, you can get a full refund of it right now, um, which would actually like that will completely negate everything that Elon said in the past, because you can get your money back. And now, if you did pay less than the actual price it is right now, like I did, I think I paid like 6,000 or something like that, five or 6,000, and it's now 10,000. Uh, so, is that difference in pricing? Is it worth the my confidence in Tesla actually delivering the system as promised, which is a true full self-driving system? It's just pretty crazy now that we keep adding like adjective before that word self-driving, even though it's
Right. And
like
that's so
everything.
that's the other thing. The marketing term
Yeah.
is just wrong. Like, we're not getting a full self-driving beta. We're getting a navigates around while you're, you know, paying attention beta.
Yeah.
So it's it's a little bit disappointing. Like, we were kind of like, all right, a couple of years I'm going to be driving to Vermont in the back seat, reading a book or sleeping or whatever. And that just seems far farther away now than it did, a few years ago when they were
Yeah,
selling
and
this.
you know what's wild? You say that right now, and then the Tesla Q people would be like, "Well, you were a dumb to think that that would happen when you bought it back then." And you're like, okay, like maybe I was, but then now today you say that, and now it's Tesla super fans. I was like, how would you even believe back then that this would take? So of course it's such a difficult technology to deliver. Of course there wouldn't be delays. Like they're saying now what like the naysayer were saying back then. It's very crazy, like the way that this
Well,
plays
and
out.
we talked about yesterday how Tesla unfortunately has a pattern of like announcing something
Mhm,
super cool and a timeline that seems impossible, and
mhm,
then of course for a price that seems crazy, like the Cybertruck for instance, 40,000 coming 2021, whatever. Then they start walking that back, and like, well, it's going to
mhm,
cost a little bit more. Well, it's not going to have all those features.
mhm,
Well, we didn't say this, we didn't say that. We implied that, or the it's going to have 600 miles of range. The Roadster, and then 520 miles of range for the Model S or whatever, and then 400 miles of range. Like all these things, it's just like when Tesla announces something, they're
mhm,
going to walk it back and walk it back and walk it
mhm.
back, and then you're going to get something, but it's not going to be as exciting as
But then here's the dilemma. Then it's still gonna be the best out there,
right,
or
right,
so far it has been. It's still gonna be the best out there. So is the deception worth the fact that like they put the bar super high, and then they don't get it, but they still get better than anybody else? Like, is that worth it? I don't know what it is. I'm just putting it out there, because it's kind of the Steve Jobs approach, right? Like, just put impossible goals out there,
right.
and push people to try to meet them. And if they don't, if they miss it, they're still it's still better than anything out there. Like, was it him or was it Elon? Like, the fact that I don't know the difference is telling a lot. But that said, like, if I don't remember what was the exact example, but it's gonna work. Like, if you give yourself like 3 days to clean your house, it's gonna take 3 days to clean your house. But if you say it's gonna, if you give yourself 1 day to clean your house, then it's gonna take 1 day to clean your house. So if you say that FSD is gonna take 3 years instead of taking 10 years, then you're gonna work with that. But the truth is, you're not maybe not gonna do it. as good as a job as you would if you had 10 years. But you're right that you're gonna deliver likely something sooner. When that would be, it's another thing.
Yeah, there's a tweet, Benedict Evans on Twitter. I actually talked about this on another podcast recently, but he says Elon Musk is a bullshitter who delivers. This breaks a lot of people's pattern matching in both directions. And that to me like is a pretty good like synopsis. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's bullshitting. Like maybe what he's saying to the world is like, this is what my expectation is, and
Mm-hmm.
this is also going out to my employees, but the reality is never going to be that. Or maybe he's like a super optimist and he's like, if everything works, this is what it's going to be. But like,
Yeah, because he's not lying. I think like most of the time, I don't detect like a lie in him, unless like he's. I mean, he's a super genius for sure. But
right,
but like this, it's just a different kind of super genius to be like a liar. Like you see it in politicians, even the best one, when the way that they talk, and like even like a good politician like Barack Obama, for example, which like a great orator, like a good politician, everything. I don't agree with all his politics, but like you can see when he says something and it's not genuine. It's like, I need to say this. Like you can see it, you can feel it a little bit.
right,
Like it's just party line or whatever. Like you don't. He doesn't mean it. With Elon, you feel like the emotion. You feel like he means it. Like most of the time. I don't know if I might be being duped by the whole thing, but I think I have a good judgment on that front most of the time. So I don't. It's so it depends what you mean by bullshitting on
yeah,
that. Like, there's a lot of different meanings to that, but I agree that's an interesting statement.
yeah, and BSing, like you just said, like, does that mean lying? Not necessarily directly, but
Yeah.
it kind of gives you more leeway to say, well, it's not going to really happen. Like, I can be a BSer and believe everything I'm saying.
Yeah. That's a good point. All right. On that note, do you want to do a quick read on our
Yep.
partner, Electrify America?
Yep. All right. This episode of the Electrek Podcast is brought to you by Electrify America. Electrify America now operates the largest public ultra-fast electric vehicle charging network in the United States. A few recent updates on the network. Electrify America is now coast to coast with more than 650 EV charging stations, with new locations opening every week. It now offers ultra-fast charging stations with speeds up to 150 kilowatts and 350 kilowatts for capable vehicles, allowing you to charge up as fast as possible and get back on the road. EA offers a new monthly subscription plan with contactless payments through its mobile apps, and with it, you can save up to 25% on charging. If you're an EV driver and want to learn more about Electrify America and its growing network of charging stations across the US, find out what they're up to at electrifyamerica.com. That's electrifyamerica.com, or hit up the link in the show notes. Thanks again to Electrify America for sponsoring this week's show.
Yes, thanks, EA. We have quite a few. This is going to be a long show, I think, but we have a few more news items to discuss. But then we're going to jump into the comment section. I know there's already a ton of comments there. So if you have a specific question or specific topics you want us to discuss at the end of the show, please put them in all caps so we can distinguish them between that and the conversation that are going on in the chat right now, because there's a bunch of people talking. Appreciate it. All right, a few more Tesla news items that are not related necessarily to the shareholders meeting. We had a former Tesla employee that has knowledge of Tesla's body this week that said that everybody missed something in the last shareholders letter that was released. Now Tesla has the habit in the last year or so to release like a bunch of pictures at the end of the shareholders meeting, just to give you an update on like the new manufacturing facilities and stuff like that, including Gigafactory Texas. And he zoomed in on the car that was shown. This is the body production line for the Model Y in Texas, and he was able to confirm that these vehicles here both feature a full single piece front casting and single piece rear casting. So it looks like Tesla is already producing Model Y full body with single front and rear casting. So this is a big deal, because this is a first in the auto industry to produce this cars like that. We know that the rear casting turned basically 70 parts into one. We don't know what it is for the front casting, but it should be something similar. So it's massive improvement in efficiency for the body of the vehicles. And yeah, I mean, just a huge accomplishment. And now, in terms of the pros, are obvious. I mean, this employees here shared some of the pros. Said you save on new factory space, of course, on capex, fewer hundreds fewer of you eliminate hundreds of welding robots and stamping machines, better NVH, lighter. The vehicle is actually lighter, increase in range because, well, in range or in efficiency, depending on how you indulge your energy with that lighter range. Make manufacturing simpler by reducing the number of stamping and welding, saving from eliminating tooling, maintenance costs of welding and stamping, vertical integration, better supply chain control because you have fewer power, and so many other benefits. So as you can see, there's a lot of benefits in having the single rear, single front casting for the body. Of course, there's some possible downside to it. People have discussed the fact that if there's a crash or something, what's going to happen? Of course, if there's a crash that affects the actual body of front and back, you're probably going to have to replace the whole part anyway. So I don't think that's as big of a deal. I think the bigger concern for people is with the structural battery pack, which we don't know if those have been applied right there from the start. I mean, obviously, there's no battery pack in there, and the battery pack is going to be a part of the body now with the new system, the new design. We did get some update on that front during the meeting, though. So previously, Elon was kind of warning people that the new Model Y at Gigafactory Texas and Berlin might not start with the structural battery pack design, that they might have to revert to 2170. But so he wasn't directly asked that. He was more asked, is there going to be 4680 battery cell production, which is required for the structural battery pack at Gigafactory Texas this year? And he said no, it's going to be next year. But he did say that the pilot line in Fremont is going to be enough to supply battery cells for Texas this year. So that would mean that Tesla is going to start production with the structural battery pack this year on Model Y. That's how I understood it. Like, it didn't make sense otherwise, is comment. So this is a good news on that front. So it looks like this year the Model Y produced Gigafactory Texas will come with front and back single pieces rear casting linked with a structural battery pack with 4680 cells. So all those combined, it's a massive improvement in efficiency. However, like, if there's a crash that affects the structure of the battery pack, then there's some issues. You need to like replace the whole car basically. But at the same time, when you're talking about a premium car like that, which is still, I mean, the Model Y is still a premium car. I'll talk about pricing in a minute. uh, you have a decent an accident with some decent force, often the insurer is going to total it. So it's Tesla is going to just take possession of the car back, especially now if they have their own insurance on it, and recycle the whole thing basically. Yeah. Now, pricing. So there was another price increase this week for both Model 3 and Model Y. Biggest price increase is for the base versions of both vehicle that each saw a $2,000 price increases. So earlier this year, there was a bunch of incremental small $500 to $1,000 price increases on a bunch of different versions of the Model 3 and Model Y, and they added up to a lot. But now this latest one is a big one, $2,000 on the standard range plus Model 3, which went from $40,000 to $42,000. So that's the cheapest Tesla you can buy in the US right now, a $42,000 standard range plus. The long range all-wheel drive Model 3 stayed the same price at $50,000. The performance version saw $1,000 increase to $58,000. Moving to the Model Y, of course, there's still only two versions of the Model Y available. Well, apparently you can buy the rear-wheel drive off the menu. I don't know if that's still true. The long-range dual motor went from $53,000 to $55,000. So this is the cheapest Model Y you can buy in the US right now, unless the rear-wheel drive is off the menu. But I don't really count off the menu item. I think it's preposterous option to, oh, we have an option, you need to know about it to order it. Model Y performance went up $1,000 to $62,000. So yeah, 55 and 42. So Elon again during the meeting linked the most recent price increases to the supply chain issues and the rising costs, which makes sense. Everyone has been seeing that, every automaker, not just Tesla. But at the same time, I like to note the fact that Tesla's gross margin have been increasing throughout the year. So uh, there's some conflicting information here.
So, little trivia question:
Mm.
what is the cheapest car you can buy on Tesla's website right now?
Well, I think you're going with the Cybertruck right now. Is what you're
Right?
trying to
Yeah,
yeah,
the Cybertruck is 40,000 if you
pre-order it right
pre-order
now.
base price, all
Yeah.
that.
I
Um,
think the issue with that is as simple as Tesla hasn't updated that page for a while and didn't bother to because because the truck has been delayed to late next year. Yeah,
right, and they're
if
not going to sell the original, the base model for years from now.
yeah. Oh yeah, that also that yeah. Like I wouldn't worry too much about the base Cybertruck. I don't think it's coming anytime soon, and by then a lot of things can change, including the price.
Yeah, I mean, so people who had put money down on that 2 years ago, 40,000,
Mm.
will probably get it, within what, 7 years, and at that point, the interest on the money you put down is probably going to be 80, 90,000 bucks. So,
Well,
um,
it's $100 the money put down, so it's
oh,
not
that's
too.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a placeholder. You're not putting down
Mm.
everything,
Yeah. They reduced that for the Cybertruck too.
right?
All right, the CCS adapter, the CCS to Tesla's proprietary plug adapter, this elusive device that Tesla owners have been asking for a long time, is actually coming this month. It sounds like.
To hear,
Sorry. I mean, I would assume to here. So that like, it's weird that we're learning all that from Tesla Korea. It's all coming from Tesla Korea. Uh, I think the reason for that literally might be as simple as the fact that Tesla has like communication team in Korea and they don't in the US. That might literally be
that would
the
be unfortunate if it's
but
true, but also not
but
surprising.
but this adapter, this very like, the hardware itself is going to be able to be used in Korea and in the US. So there's no reason for Tesla not to launch it in the US. It's just I mean in Korea they use the same standard. They use the CCS1 standard as we do here. So it's not
Same
uh,
plugs too.
yeah, same plug. So
Oh,
it's
so
not.
you could theoretically send one over.
Oh yeah, you can send one over, and I mean, I would assume that Tesla's going to put it on the store in the US too. But yeah, why we're talking about Korea here? So earlier this year, Tesla told Korean owners that the adapter is coming in the first half of the year. That never happened, but this
Shocker.
week, yeah, this week they sent another email to them saying that on Tuesday, October 19, they're gonna start the sell for preferential purchase tickets. So this, I don't know exactly what that means, but there's going to be like something kind of a pre-sale of it for owners, and then it's going to go on official sell on the Tesla website, I assume, on the 26th. Um, yeah, so this all information is coming from Korea. I would assume that the same thing is going to happen at the same time or shortly after in the US because it would make no sense if it doesn't. But wouldn't get past that Tesla either. They say that the adapter is only for use in the Model 3 and Model Y. Nothing on Model S and X yet, but the compatibility should arrive later on at a later date. And they're talking about a price that is the equivalent of $250 US. So not too bad for such an adapter. But yeah, I mean, there's already been an adapter for the same adapter in Europe but that was from CCS to Type 2 because Tesla was using a different standard in Europe. They already changed all the standards in Europe on the car themselves that ship for the European market to CCS. So they don't need them for the new ones. That's just for the older ones. But in Korea, in the US, and a few other markets, they still use the. I think someone in the comment section actually listed all the markets that use Tesla's proprietary plug. Yeah, so U.S., Puerto Rico. Well, Puerto Rico is part of the U.S. basically. Mexico, Canada, Japan, and Korea. So just a few of those markets, but the big ones like the U.S. they use this proprietary plug. And you never had an adapter for the CCS for that. It just had the CHAdeMO. And speaking of, the CHAdeMO just disappeared from Tesla store in the US. So,
Coincidence?
yeah, I doubt it's a coincidence. I think that the new adapter for CCS is coming. I think no one was buying CHAdeMO because it's not a great investment. It's since the standard is basically dying now, basically dead, and being replaced by CCS. So, and also the timing, I think, is important for Tesla to release this soon in well, not necessarily North America, but in anywhere where they're going to open the supercharger network to other automakers, which I think they're going to do in Europe first because it makes more sense since it's going to be easier there. They don't even going to need an adapter. But if you're opening the supercharger network to non-Tesla EVs, makes sense to finally give Tesla EVs access to non-Tesla supercharger, like Electrify America in the US and Ionity in Europe. Well, again, in Europe, it's another thing. Tesla owners have already access to those, so it may it would make sense for Tesla to make the move first. Really, like just like help us out before you help out other people, other owners. Like, it would make sense, but especially a lot of owners are worried about non Tesla EVs coming on the network and increasing traffic. So it would make it like a more fair landscape if Tesla owners could also use. I mean, at the end of the day, like you have to think about it. Like it's if it's $250, it's still like a decent amount to invest in it. So you're gonna try to see how often you're gonna use it because if you end up like I bought a CHAdeMO adapter and it was more expensive even. I think it was
Yeah,
500 bucks.
400, 500. Yeah.
400, I think. Yeah,
I've got one as well.
I've
I think
used
I
it.
would try to sell mine. Probably now would be a perfect time to sell
Yeah,
it,
yeah, that's a good idea.
and
Sell it
then
now if you can.
get my cash ready for this one.
Yeah, because I think I use mine probably like half a dozen time
Yep,
max.
same.
So that's expensive a charge at that point. So think about it too because the supercharger is very extensive. Like it's all over North America right now. There's like depending on some routes that you do more often than not, there might be an Electrify America charger that makes more sense and everything. So uh, there's gonna be, and the more they're growing too, they're growing fast. So that would make sense. But think about it too because if you ended up using just a few times, you're gonna regret it. All right, moving on from Tesla news, GM also had their shareholders meeting this week, earlier in the week, and there was a lot of announcement regarding electric vehicles. The biggest one is that they plan to be the market share, they call it the market share leader, EV market share leader in the US,
In the
and
future.
by 2030, by
Eh?
2030, and they plan that leadership to help them double their sales. So right now, the leader in EV market share in the US is Tesla, and it's Tesla by a long shot. GM is second. To be fair, they're second, but they are like a few miles behind second place. Not only a few miles, like Tesla is not only ahead, like they lapped a few times around them. Like
Right.
they might look close sometimes, but it takes actually a few lap around them
And
already.
GM is doing incredibly poor right now because of the Bolt recall. So it's like not only
Yeah,
is Tesla moving forward, GM's kind of moving backwards at the same time.
yeah, the Bolt and the Bolt EV and EUV are their only vehicles that they're selling right now. And at the same time as they're selling, they're recalling all of them and putting new batch packs in them and everything. So, and a lot of people are asking for buybacks because they lost confidence in the vehicles and everything. So it's like you said, not a great situation for GM right now. But they're banking big time on the Ultium based vehicles, starting with the Hummer, the Lyric. But after that, like Hummers and Lyrics, like the Cadillacs, they're not high volume vehicles. The Hummer is certainly not a high volume vehicle. But they announced a bunch of new vehicles to come, including this. Well, they talk about the Buick crossover and everything. Those are all vehicles that we knew about. The Lyric from Cadillac, the Celestiq from Cadillac, those are all cars that we knew about. But they talk about a new Chevrolet crossover priced at around $30,000. So this sounds like a new generation Bolt EV, or maybe a little bit bigger. What's the bigger crossover from Chevy? It's the
Equinox, or is that a truck? I don't know.
well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's a SUV.
Cruise? I don't know.
it sounds like gonna be like at $30,000. It sounds like it's gonna be like the next generation of the Bolt, basically, maybe, or maybe a little bit bigger. I don't know. But that's a new car that they announced. Well, they didn't announce we knew that the Silverado Electric is coming, but they said that they're going to unveil it in January at CES. GM always has a big thing at CES, big
Yeah,
presence.
and I think Mary Barra is going to be the keynote speaker, which I
Yeah.
think has happened in the past as well. But it's going to be a big event for them.
Yeah. And along with the Silverado Electric, which they posted this new image of it with the glass roof here, there's the GMC Sierra, which I think is going to be based on the same platform, but it's going to be a little
Yeah,
bigger. The Sierra E, is that what they're calling them now? The E?
yeah, that's the first time I've heard it called the
Yeah.
Sierra E and the Silverado E, but that seems like the nomenclature currently.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Nope.
I'm not a big fan of when they take an existing vehicle, gas powered vehicles, and then they add like, oh, this is the electric version of it, because then people start comparing pricing. They start like doing all that thing. It's not ideal. Like, and I mean, most of the time it's going to be a better car. The electric version is going to be, but you know how people are. Sometimes just a sticker price. They don't take into account the cost savings, the fuel savings, and
Yeah, and for me, there's also the implication that they just pulled out the guts and put in electric. Like instead of
yeah.
designing the
I don't think
car
that's
around
going to be the
electric.
case
Right.
now with the Ultium platform, but you're right. Like, it can be a concern. Um, Yeah, and they at the same time they unveiled they said, so they said this plan that they want to take the EV market share leadership in the US. They want to release all those new vehicles, which I mean, two pickup trucks. That's going to be a big deal to achieve that and everything. But there's one thing that stuck out to me that were like, oh, like every time I'm like, GM. I'm not the biggest fan of GM with all the bad things that they did on electric vehicles in the past, and their lobbying against it, even recently, that lobbying against electric vehicles. But every time they make a big announcement like that, I'm like, all right, I'll give them a shot and everything. But then at the end of it, they say, we plan for more than 50% of the company's North America and China manufacturing footprint to be capable of EV production by 2030. To me, this kills the whole thing now, because okay, like that's great, that's all right, a big investment and everything, but 2030, so you could have up to 50% of your production capacity that's still going to be for internal combustion engine vehicles by 2030.
Detroit seems like a vacuum when it comes to EVs. Like they just really don't see the world the same way that we do.
Yeah,
They like
but it's too many trucks for them. Like, they're like, there's no pickup trucks that's electric at all. About the Rivian has just started deliveries and everything, so maybe that's gonna have a little impact. That's the thing. I think this is gonna change every year. Like next year, GM's gonna have their share motor reading. It's like they're gonna be more than 60% of our
right,
production capacity is gonna be electric, everything, and that's okay. But like, they're gonna adapt. They're just being slow about it, but the thing is that they're not going to be ready for the big change, which again, I'm saying the big change, it's going to happen right around 2025. There's going to be enough great options in every segment to be electric by 2025 that no one in their right mind is going to buy a new car with a combustion engine in it, because the
right,
new car thing is the big thing.
and the education is going to be there for
Yeah,
for consumer education. There's going to be a charging infrastructure there, not
massive
just
charging infrastructure. Yeah.
so all the things are kind of coming together right now.
Exactly. So right now they plan for 50, right now, like the planning department at
In
GM.
2030, half of our stuff is
Yeah,
going to be gas.
gonna be
20
useless. That's what they're saying. It's gonna be
well, they're just not going to sell
manufacturing
anything.
capacity that's gonna be completely useless. And then if next year they change that to 60%, yeah, but like they're losing time right now to be
Right.
ready, because we know how complicated the supply chain and the investment in changing the production capacity the electric is.
Stranded assets. Yeah.
Exactly. So every year that you lose, you're gonna lose market share by 2025. Like, it's not gonna be ready by then. So I don't
I
know.
mean, I don't know that they have the money or the, investor confidence to do it, but like if you were running one of these companies, Ford, GM, even, Volkswagen to extent, Mercedes, would you just say, all right, we're going to take a huge loss this year. We're going to spend the whole year retooling everything to build electric vehicles and, spend all the time we can getting batteries and all this other stuff? Or would you, continue to put out gas cars, and focus energy on building gas cars and marketing gas cars? Um, I don't know that a company could survive a year like that, without,
With great leadership, they can.
yeah,
I mean,
you sell it to
like,
the shareholders.
I don't think Mary Barra is that right now. I don't
Right.
think she's old school. Like, a lot of people like got sold on the idea she's the first woman to lead the big automakers, and that's great. That's an incredible achievement and everything. But other than that, like, she's still old school auto, like Detroit
Right.
engineer, deep in the petrol
Right.
stuff. So like she's not and to be fair, like, our men peers are not are not better, but
Right.
like, we need, like, and this is the wild thing too. Like, I strongly like, we disagree on a few things with Elon, but I strongly believe is by far the most important person on earth for accelerating electric vehicle adoption. If you have a CEO like a Mary Barra right now going, we are changing, or we're investing in 100% production capacity to be electric globally by 2025, you'd have a massive impact. Which, if you would remove the fact that this was influenced partly by Tesla, like, this probably wouldn't happen without Elon Musk and Tesla, it would have just as much of an impact. If it wasn't for that, it would be a massive impact. So, like, she could make her name in history right now if she would do that. But shareholder pressure, like you said, and the
Yeah, I
risk
mean, would the
might be,
board just like oust her like immediately if she did something like that?
well, like, she would still be, she would be a rock star still. Like, she would,
Right.
like, like, she could get away and like try to do an hostile takeover with the investor that are smart enough to see to see what's happening and everything. It would be wild. But I don't know. She I don't see her doing that.
Yeah, unlikely.
Mm.
And to the detriment of the company that she runs, I think.
Long term, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, maybe short term is gonna look good. Like, that's the problem with Wall Street, like, quarter to quarter and everything. And you have to give that to Elon. He had a much more better long term vision than any of those people.
Also, so one last thing, I know we're going long on this, but
Yeah.
one thing could be that they're just telling people this so people don't just stop buying gas cars. Like, they're just saying, look, in 2030, there's still going to be 50% gas cars. Don't worry. Don't, you don't have to buy an electric car right now. Like, there could be that. And they really truly know deep down inside that they're going to, in 2030, it's going to be all electric
Uh, yeah.
because they
I
have to
mean,
sell cars
You
right
you
now.
you've been in those meetings with those people, like those,
Yeah, they
like,
don't.
executive at the, and when we do, because we do every time we do our speech, that, like, you guys are missing the boat here. Like, by 2025, no one's gonna buy 'em. Like, the look that I get every time I say that
Right.
to old school automotive people, old school automotive journalists, old school auto everything, and always like, well, this kid is out of his mind. He doesn't know anything. And, like, all right, maybe I do, maybe I don't, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
you're right. But these people like the Murray Barra level, they
Yeah,
have a lot of, insight. I
yeah.
want to say in my brain, like, maybe they understand what's happening, or they should hedge. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time on it.
Well, last thing on GM that they announced at the shareholder meeting is the Ultra Cruise. So this is not a replacement to the Super Cruise. It's just a different suite of advanced driver assistance features that is going to be for the premium GM vehicles, so like the Cadillacs and the whatnot. Well, it's kind of going to be a replacement because Super Cruise isn't Cadillac right now, but Super Cruise is going to exist. Ultra Cruise is going to be the premium option. And the way they phrased it, they went full Tesla. they went full self-driving. They went through hands-free driving. So, like Tesla, like to use the full beforehand, now they use the through for the hands-free driving on 95% of driving scenario in the US and Canada. So due to the fact that they have their driving monitoring system like they do in Super Cruise, they allow you to put your hands off the wheel. But unlike Super Cruise, which is just for highways, now it's going to be for more driving scenario, like 95% of driving scenario. So city streets, I would assume, and things like that. But it's also like Super Cruise. It's geofence to mapped out HD mapped areas, and they're talking about at launch more than 2 million miles in the US and Canada, and that's going to grow to 3 or 4 million miles. So it's hard to imagine like what like 2 or 3 million miles is of a road, but apparently it's a lot.
Mm.
So that's the good news. Yeah, some features that you talk about here for Ultra Cruise, which is relies on 360 cameras, radars, and lidars, is going to provide users with information based on their experience of the system through all new dynamic display. So much like Tesla Autopilot and FSD has their driver visualization, they're going to have their similar thing here. React to permanent traffic control devices. So permanent is the main important word here because they are geofence and they use HD maps. Needs to be permanent one. So if you have like construction with like had it stop or had a traffic light, won't use that. Follow internal navigation routes. Maintain headway. Follow speed limits. So traffic over cruise control. Support automatic and on-demand lane changes. So this is a big change for them. Support left and right hand turns. So it's actually gonna do some turns in the traffic light
What
situation.
if they're like only left, no right?
Well, it would be only right before it's gonna be only left, I
Right,
think.
right.
Support close object avoidance, so object detection on the road. That's important. Support parking in residential driveways, so it's gonna be able to park itself. So don't hold your breath, though. This is coming to select few vehicles in 2023.
2023 is not that far.
Yeah,
It's
it's not that far, but
almost
still.
2022. And GM's a little bit like they're not perfect at hitting their targets. Like that, they're a little bit late on the bolt because of the pandemic, but they're usually a little bit more reliable in terms of hitting that stuff. I will say, like I did Super Cruise in the Bolt EUV on that first drive, and I like as a Tesla Autopilot user, I was like, oh, this is refreshing. I don't have to have my hand on the wheel and put pressure on it. So they have something. Like I don't know if they're going to get to level 3 or 4 or whatever, but they definitely have a product right now that works pretty well. Pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, to do the Tesla comparison, it sounds a lot like Super Cruise is like Autopilot, and Ultra Cruise is like
Right.
FSD, but to a degree. And they're being a lot more careful with their marketing than Tesla, obviously.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, of course, if you believe in Elon Musk's latest timeline, by the time this comes out, Tesla is going to have a true, fully 100% full self-driving robo taxi. This is what we need to hold them to, like the robo taxi term, because robo taxi term is pretty clear.
Yep.
It's gonna do what a taxi can do, but instead of having a driver in it, it's gonna be a robot. It's gonna be the car. It's gonna be so.
Which Waymo actually announced today that they've done that for a year
Yeah.
in Phoenix, and they're actually expanding it to the whole Phoenix area.
Mm-hmm.
Like they literally have cars without drivers taking people places.
Yeah, they do. They certainly do.
So it's possible. It's
Yeah.
just is it
But
in
if you're
your
a Tesla
it,
super fan, you're like, this is worthless because it's geofence into Phoenix area. Yeah, but what if they
yeah.
expand to New York next? And what if they expand to
Yeah, if
Los
you live in
Angeles? And
Phoenix, you're like, maybe I'll
yeah.
get that Jaguar with the the I pace.
Yeah, but like that, well, that's the thing. It's only like the competition for them is more like Uber and stuff like that.
Right.
Like they're not really selling it to the end user right now. But
But we know Google, like
uh,
they build maps products pretty,
uh,
into
yeah.
cars. They've got their fingers into the Volvo and Ford and everybody else.
Mm. All right, should we jump into the comments, the
Let's do it.
questions? Yeah.
All right. Roll a 20 says is Powerwall LFP or NMC?
Well, as far as we know, they haven't officially announced a change to LFP. There's been talked about it. They say that the LFP is now good enough for them to use in cars, so we'd assume it would be good enough for use in stationary storage. But there hasn't been a true like official statement that they moved to. And also we haven't seen like updated specs that would indicate that anything changed in terms of the chemistry of the batteries used in Powerwall.
One thing to think about on the LFP versus the traditional, I guess, traditional-ish lithium,
NCA and MC.
yeah, is that LFP doesn't perform as well in cold weather. So if your power wall is located on the outside of your house and you live in cold weather, or even in your garage with cold weather, that's something to think about. Maybe the power walls without with LFP are going to be sold in warm weather places at first or something. All right, moving on. Any estimate on how much FSD development has cost Tesla? Is it worth it in your opinion overall? Well, at this very moment, that
well, is it awarded for Tesla because he's talking about the cost, or they're talking about the cost?
Yeah,
to Tesla. I mean,
So-
every automaker is making the investment towards that. Like,
yeah, you're going to need to have that in a few years.
Yeah.
At this very second, Tesla has sold quite a few, autopilot self-driving stuff. So yeah, probably worth it. No idea on the actual number, but whatever it is, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing too that we didn't discuss, but like it would be worth doing a deep dive at one point into the realized revenue from Tesla from the FSD, like, because that they put that aside as a liability, basically, but not a liability, but like unrecognized revenue because they haven't delivered on the features, but they took the money from the customers, and then they slowly, as they improve, like they unlock the revenue and they recognize that every quarter or so, they change that number per FSD package sold. Um, and that's a pretty arbitrary
Yeah.
arbitrary amount. Like, it's who decides that? Well, it's strange.
Yeah. All right. Tobias says, do you think the proposed EV tax credit will come through? So, as a little bit of a backdrop, there was two Democratic senators, Manchin and the woman from Arizona, can't remember her name right now, that weren't on board with the Democrats' what is it, $4.4 trillion infrastructure package, which kind of blew up the whole thing. Now they're kind of rejiggering it. It's going to be a lot less. We don't know specifically how the Democrats are going to change the plan, but they're going to try to push through a smaller plan that these two senators are okay with. Obviously, Republicans don't have a lot of say in it at the moment. It might be a smart move if the Republicans, said, hey, you need two of us, like, just, throw some money at, whatever
Our way
Republican thinks. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there's going to be an EV tax credit. It might not be as big as we initially saw, and hopefully it's not as union focused as it was initially.
That's when you guys wish you had a third party system, like we
Oh
do
my God.
here, and you can make a quick deal.
Right. Exactly. It would be
With
such a good
the
thing.
third party, let's.
Yeah. We got the Yang gang. Yang just moved to third party. So.
You on?
Yep. All right. Jed Anderson says, can GM sell their new EV Hummer in Texas easier than Tesla's X? What do you think?
Well, I'm not sure what he means by easier. Like, is it going to sell more than the X?
I think about the dealerships.
I mean, the dealership, yes, it's going to be a lot easier. Like, GM use a third-party dealership models, which is accepted in Texas, unlike Tesla's direct sell models. In terms of like if the sales are going to be better, though, I mean, the Model X now is a lot more expensive than it was before the refresh. So, but they've been accumulating also a big a big backlog for a while. So I think they're going to do fine for the next year.
All right. The Model 3 is no longer an affordable car, I think. Do you think the prices will come down again? Elon has said that they will come down again, but what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You said, like you said, Tesla was aiming for it to come down, but again, maybe you're just gonna wait for the new incentive, the federal incentive, which is gonna reduce the price a lot too. But yeah,
What are the
they
top
should
three
bring it
non?
down. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
What are the top three non-Tesla brands that you see becoming global leaders in the auto industry of the future in the 2030s? What
Well,
What do you think?
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if you're talking about legacy
VW's there,
automakers,
right?
huh?
VW's there, right?
Yeah, I think if you're talking about legacy automakers, the ones that seem like the most serious right now about electrification, like Volkswagen, is at the top of my list. Like the Dieselgate, like it's a scandal, like shook them a lot, and they're like, all right, now we need to change our ways, and like that was very positive for them in a way, and they have a lot of reach like in every market, so that's very good. Um, I mean, I think Rivian, like I really like what I'm seeing from Rivian. I think they, I know people don't like that, like they're the next Tesla, but I mean, Tesla is like the only startup in the auto industry that was successful. I think Rivian's going to be the next one, uh, and if they can ramp up faster than Tesla, which they probably can, I think, since they had that blueprint from Tesla. Of course, we didn't talk about it this week, but there was Tesla is kind of ramped up their. They claim that Rivian is stealing technology from them now, like especially specifically battery technology. So this whole thing could play out. It could be interesting because Tesla has been kind of successful on that front, like that when it comes to going after people for stealing trade secrets. Like I know they did it for Zoox. Like they reached a settlement and Zoox apologized. Like they said, "Well, we did." I'm not saying that Rivian stole anything, but could be interesting. So yeah, Volkswagen, Rivian, and then probably another legacy automaker that's going to come out fine on top of that. I mean,
Mercedes.
like with what I would just discussed, I kind of lose some faith in it. Ford, I like Ford, I see the F-150, their current plan to have like 160,000 units per year in 2025. It's like I wish I would. It would need to be a lot more than that. So like in terms of the American automakers, like it's not great other than Tesla and like I said, Rivian. So do you see Daimler?
Yeah, I was going to say Mercedes. I think that
Yeah.
we saw them at IAA in Germany, and they seemed like they had like a big, it was like a tidal wave coming with their thing.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's strange like the Volkswagen and Daimler. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I would agree with that.
All right. Two more. Any news on the Atlas truck? I feel like that was already gone or something.
Yeah, I mean, I know they revealed like a prototype this week. I wasn't last week. I wasn't really impressed by it. I'm having issues with Atlas because like they don't have a lot of money and they are marketing like crazy. They're crowdfunding. That's all they're
Right.
marketing
That's right.
basically. Like you go on Instagram and like if you're someone like me who research electric vehicles a lot and you get electric vehicle ads all the time, you get ads for you to invest in their crowdfunding for
Not
a
a good
truck
look.
that doesn't exist. That's not a greatest look for me. Like we report a lot on like Indiegogo stuff or like e-bikes and things like that. And even then we're like being super careful all the time. Like we want to see a prototype of it beforehand and things like that because crowdfunding space is it's great. There's a lot of great things that can come from crowdfunding, but you have to be careful in that space. And when you talk about a pickup truck built from the ground up to be crowdfunded, like that's a wild endeavor there. So like I'm not saying that those people are bad people or anything like that. I'm just saying that we have to be super careful about promoting, reporting, and all that stuff. So until they can show more, we're not gonna talk too much about them, unfortunately.
All right, we got two just comments, I guess. Mark Benton says, I have a 100 safety score if I don't get FSD beta tonight. Should I take a hostage? No, but uh, do keep us involved if you do get it. We'd love to see it. If you're in New York or close to the Montreal border, we'll come jump in the car and give it a ride. And then final comment is a third party will never work until we get ranked choice voting. That's regarding
Yeah.
Yang. And then one final thing is, how is the Tesla high mileage Model X holding up? Question to Fred.
Apparently fine. I haven't driven it in a while since the car is in LA, and I haven't been in LA in a year now. So my friend Chris Payne is driving it, and he says it's doing great. He loved it so much he wants to buy it from me. So I might sell him to him in the coming weeks. We'll see.
And it'll be
But
in the next electric car movie.
yeah, probably. No, it's doing fine. Although this week he did reach out to me. There was an issue with the key fob. Apparently, one of the key fob is not working anymore. So that's the only problem. If that's the only problem that you're having right now with the car that has 400,000 miles on it, you're doing fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for listening and watching this show this week. I don't know what's a long one, an hour 20. I hope that you were it was bearable for you guys. It was fun for us. We love to talk about EV stuff. If you haven't noticed, so if you are still watching right now, you're a true one. You're a true Electrek fan. I appreciate you a lot. If you can give us a thumbs up on the podcast right now, either if you're watching on the YouTube or Facebook. If you're just listening audio only, if you can give us a 5-star review, that's always super helpful, and we appreciate it. And I hope you have a safe weekend. We're going to see you same time next